To our honorable and faithful leaders, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your kindness, generosity of spirit, and your concern for our future. At first we rejected you, but that was because we did not understand. We didn't realize how much we needed you. We didn't appreciate that your arrival was a precious gift.
Homefront the Revolution, I think, astounded us on stage the other day, and we're talking to CJ, who is the man, the creative vision behind the game's narrative. Would that creative vision? Would that be right?
I think that's probably a bit strong. I think that creative vision is a shared thing that is maintained by many at the studio.
Well, let's touch upon what your actual job role is then. What do you bring to Homefront?
Well, I bring an American perspective on the narrative and on the world. So obviously being developed in Nottingham, the UK, and having worked on the original game myself, I have a sort of strong connection to the universe, to some of the lore, and to the country which is being occupied in the game.
Okay. Homefront's, it feels like a page on the internet that's being refreshed a few times just to get it up and running. I'm just curious to know, that was a really bad metaphor, was it? That was probably the worst.
That was a strained metaphor, but okay, I think I can follow it.
All right, you're going with that. I'm just curious to know exactly between the then and the now. I mean, how much is being chucked out, how much is being kept? I mean, is this like a jigsaw puzzle of various versions and various stories and various ideas that will all come together now?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and unfortunately it's one that I'm not 100% qualified to answer. Like I said, I worked on the original and then left for a time, and I'm now coming back to the game. But the biggest difference I would say is between then and now, the game went from being a direct sequel to the original game and a linear shooter to being an open world game and having a tenuous connection at best beyond the core conceit of a fallen America occupied by the military of North Korea. Other than that, I mean, the two games are, I guess as you'd say in England, chalk and cheese.
That's true, chalk and cheese indeed, though that would be probably a worse subtitle for it, I believe.
Yeah, I think Homefront the Revolution, chalk and cheese, or maybe that's there's sequel potential there.
There we go, third one. DLC, or a mobile version, basically. No, he's not buying that at all, he's not buying that at all. All right, well, let's talk narrative, let's talk, so yeah, occupied America, right, okay? Who are the characters, who are the people that we see?
Well, we're not getting too much into the story just now, but I can say that we are putting you in the boots of a resistance fighter named Ethan Brady. He's sort of an up-and-comer in the movement, you know, learning the ropes, and basically he's you know, fighting for a cause that he believes in. But there are just so many other things going on in the world, you know, factions, not factions, but like there's a civilian population, some of whom are just trying to live their lives, some of whom have accepted the occupation, and the two of those groups and all of them don't get along necessarily well. The occupation obviously has troops on the ground, and so I think in the demo that we're showing, you saw Dana Moore, who's a senior fighter within the Resistance, and she tasked the player to take and hack a KPA data transceiver. That's her mission. She's calling the shots on that one. And all sorts of obstacles popped up in your way, and it was really up to the player to figure out the best path around them. You know, you can ambush that vehicle with a barrel trap. You can actually there's a variety of other solutions to that sort of problem. And then as soon as that's done and the reinforcements come in, you have to beat a hasty retreat, because unlike other shooters, the player is vulnerable. It's part of the fantasy, strangely enough, of being a guerrilla fighter is being fragile, having an overwhelming force come after you. You need to hit and run, not stand and fight.
Which is what I thought was interesting, certainly when we played it, and that was pretty much key to the demo and what we enjoyed about it the most. The fact is, if you try and take a direct approach, you're screwed, basically. You're going to get completely out. Yeah.
It can work, but it's probably not the most efficient way to play.
That's in itself because you're having to rethink basically how to interact with this particular world. I'm just curious to know, I mean, there's an edge to it because of this sort of open world, like you said, it sort of went from being a very linear shooter to explore the environment, check out where you can go and what you can do. I mean, where's the balance for you guys to try and nudge the player into areas and possible environments that they could use to their benefit without making hand-holding it and telling them to go there?
Well, I think, you know, that is certainly a challenge that you face in an open world game. And obviously the sort of obvious solution is the objective marker. So if you're ever lost, you just hit back on the control pad and it'll show you where to go for the mission that you've accepted. But more interestingly, like if you have decided, I don't want to do missions for a while, I kind of want to play around in the open world, maybe I've done a couple of activities here and there, now what do I do? What do I do for fun? You saw the taking of a strike point, which was sort of the map screen turning blue, and when you came out of that, you saw more pro-resistance posters on the wall, more graffiti, and more resistance fighters on the street. Now, the interesting thing to note is that by taking those strike points, you are not capturing the neighborhood, right? It's not, oh, there's no enemies in the area anymore. Those patrols are still on the streets, but you have additional resistance fighters now there to help you engage them, to aid you in that fight. And if you ever are lost and looking for something to do, if you see a group of them running off in one direction, you can follow them because they will generally lead you to either another strike point or an interesting gunfight or some location. They all get tasked with their own missions.
Another thing I thought was interesting in the demo, certainly what was shown on the conference stage the other day, was pulling up the gun and having those multiple choices for upgrading or changing, stuff like that. I mean, how wide are we talking about?
We do have different attachment points on all of the weapons. So there's something on the barrel, so you can attach a suppressor or a muzzle brake. There are things for under the barrel, so laser sights, foregrips, bipods, things like that. And then you can switch out the optics, so you go from the iron sights to, say, a red dot or a high-powered sniper scope. And then I don't know if you saw, but there is also the conversion, which allows you to basically remove the entire upper receiver from the weapon and attach a new homebrew guerrilla weapon to it. So, to give an example, the M4 upper receiver comes off, and it goes from being an assault rifle to being a magnetic limpet mine launcher that you can use against enemy vehicles and drones and things like that. So you'll find blueprints throughout the world that you can then use to get those new, and it just totally changes the functionality of the weapon.
I was curious about that because it's obvious that you're not going to start the game with access to everything. You're going to start, I'm assuming, with basics, but I mean, how do you earn that? Is that a case of just taking over those points that we were talking about earlier?
I mean, all of the things that are earned are through a combination of progression, through discovery, through finding those blueprints like I mentioned. And it's really up to the player to, in some cases, set the pace and set the tone, and then figure out what they've got available to them, what they can afford, what they want, what suits their play style, and what sort of situations they anticipate running into that they might need a certain tool for.
Can we sort of touch upon the trailer that you guys revealed, which I thought was a wonderful, really well done trailer? I mean, is that developed in-house? Are you guys working with a third party to create that?
That was developed with an external agency, yes.
But again, is that something you guys, it's more like a creative back and forth because you want to emphasize the character, the game, the world, everything in it?
Mm-hmm. No, that was a very collaborative process between us and them, and yeah, I think the result is absolutely stunning.
Okay. Well, coming from the first one, like you said, you've worked on the first one, you're coming to this. Change of power? Is it being very weird? Does it feel like an entirely different game apart from, like you said, that very main central idea of invaded America?
Absolutely. I mean, the difference between a linear game and an open world game is already striking enough. The interesting thing is it also feels very familiar. And it's its own unique game. But I remember the first time that I got a chance to sit down and really spend time with it and start exploring the neighborhoods, and I thought, no, this feels like the Homefront that I worked on, except blown out in all different directions. And if I want to run off and explore that back alley, it's there for me to look at and perhaps even escape down later.
Because that's the idea of you can do it straight, maybe not advisable. You're going to get shot, but it's using the environment to your advantage. Not
just straight, but up, down. Did you see the motorbike? Yeah. So one of my preferred, and it's a little out of the fiction, but I do like to take the motorbikes up fire escape stairs and onto the roofs of buildings, and then find out how many of the rooftops I can jump across. And many of the rooftops do have ramps that connect them to other rooftops, either for running or for this bike. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to do it, you probably can. We're trying to put as little restriction as possible on the player's freedom of movement and of how they approach problems and solutions.
So, okay, so if the guys are trying to test the game, they're like, would you just stop driving on the rooftops?
No, not so much. Like, driving on the rooftops is okay. And actually, in terms of the testing, I've seen most recently a group of our testers were trying to ambush one of the patrols by laying enough explosives in the street to get the vehicle to flip up over onto the rooftop. So I expect that when we release, there'll be a lot of YouTube videos of people finding their own amusements in the game.
I was going to say, I mean, this era, obviously Twitch and live streaming and everything like that, you guys are getting to see people play it like firsthand. But is that curiosity, as in, right, we can do this, how far can we push it? Let's leave that to community. So you guys, after launch, should be sitting down with some popcorn, watching live streams of this, watching the best of?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, even here at Gamescom, it's been fascinating to watch all of the different people and all of the different playthroughs, because some people have gotten a very, very easy ride in terms of the amount of enemy resistance that they've encountered, and some people have been just crushed instantly through almost no fault of their own, right? They got spotted offhand, and all of a sudden they're surrounded by vehicles with troops and airships moving in, and it was just mayhem. And I feel like there's still obviously some balancing to be done, but it means that the systems are working as intended.
That's true. So sort of wrapping then, you've come here, you've shown it, you're heading back to the studio. What's the roadmap for the next couple of months? What are you guys concentrating on?
Well, the roadmap for the next couple of months, I think it's fair to say that we are going to be concentrating as hard as we can on finishing the game, getting it good and polished, getting it, ready for release sometime early 2016. But additionally, we've announced on the Microsoft stage that we're having a 4-player cooperative beta sometime this winter. I don't know the exact dates yet, but that's obviously going to become a big focus of our efforts in the coming weeks and months.
Is that within the co-op? Is that within the campaign? Is that a separate thing parallel to the campaign?
That is to be revealed.
I should say to be continued. I'm sure we'll be talking about this later on.
I hope so.
Listen, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thanks very much.
Yes. For more on Homefront, keep it locked to Gamereactor.
A new day has dawned, and a brighter future beckons. And for this, we say, thank you.